Hey, tolerators. This is To All the Men I've Tolerated Before with Natalie Katona, your weekly look at everyday misogyny. We have the wonderful, the ever-essent Annie Sieg with us today, my wife.
Just call me effervescent?
Yeah. Ooh, look at me with my SAT words. And don't worry, today will be a reality TV episode.
Of course. I only call on to discuss, I was going to say two things, reality TV and art, but really, that's just one thing.
It's just the one thing, the art of my spiritual father, Andy Cohen. All right, well, this time, y'all are going to be so lucky because we're finally going to be giving hell to the men of Southern Charm.
Oh God, it has been hard. Southern Charm from the jump has been a little challenging. I think a lot of people didn't get into it in the first place because it has such powerful plantation energy.
It does.
That's a bit hard to overcome. And then the entire premise that they were like, Bravo's full of shows about women for women. What if instead it was about Southern gentlemen? Is kind of a tough sell.
Well, you know what's so stupid? It wasn't. So Southern Charm has been on the air for 10 years. It's in South Carolina. It just follows these Southern dudes with Peter Pan syndrome. They're drinking and their white privilege. And I didn't catch on to the fact that this show is the only show on Bravo that centers Ben as the story and will make decisions with the men in mind first until like today. And I was like, yeah. And I think it's because they did a brilliant thing with making me invested with those losers on Southern Charm through Summer House and Winter House.
Yeah. I also, just as a preface going into this episode, I need to state for the record, I'm going to talk a lot of shit on Southern Charm today. I love Southern Charm. I love things that I hate. It can be both. But more importantly, I need everyone to know that Southern hospitality is one of the greatest things that's ever happened to reality TV. The most recent season of Southern Hospitality revived me from the grave. And anything negative I have to say about Southern Charm does not touch my baby princess Southern Hospitality. Be clear.
I'll cut that and then I'll tag the entire cast who just stare at their phones all day to see if they're going to be tagged in something. Yeah. It's a different vibe on Southern hospitality. It's more of an even match of men to women.
It's more of an even match, and the character, like the male characters on Southern Hospitality are either complete flops and kind of know it, or are sinister gays, which I love. And so the men there, that works for me. And then the women on that show, we don't have time to get into it. We could dedicate not just an episode, but a lifetime to discuss it. And I just...
in awe.
I've never seen anyone do work like she did on season 3.
God. Well, Annie, as the Bravo historian, which Southern Charm man do you want to destroy first?
Ooh, what a good question. Am I, in terms of, I just feel like we just gotta eliminate them from the conversation, or like I'm really mad and want to get vengeance upon them?
Like the one that it's like, we have to talk about this one because he's ruined my life and others.
All right, well, I'm gonna skip over the obvious answer since he's not current cast. The obvious answer being Thomas Ravenel, like in real life, needs to be like Hannibal Lecter style in like a full body prison at all times. But of the more current cast, I'm gonna say Whitney.
Oh, I thought Whitney would be so low on the totem pole because like he's hardly on the show anymore and he's melting.
Yes, he is melting. He does look like a melting wax figure of Katie. That is true. However, I hold permanent beef with Whitney because I blame a lot of what happened with Katherine on Whitney. And granted, Katherine has made a lot of her own decisions that are not great, but there was some weird stuff in the early season of his treatment of her, and then you see glimpses of what kind of like nightmare person like that he is in things like this season. He was barely in the show, and he's a producer who can get things cut, and it still made it through the cut that he got like crazy blackout drunk at a dinner party and criticized one of the women for wanting to eat dessert because she was too fat.
Also, important context on the woman in question who was trying to eat a cupcake, and Whitney said, and I quote, "the last thing you need." It's Molly from America's Next Top Model. If you don't remember Molly from America's Next Top Model, she's the one that Tyra destroyed by giving her that really bad spaghetti blonde weave and then cutting it out of her hair.
Yeah, Tyra did do crimes upon her. She's really gone through the ringer reality TV wise because she got assaulted by Tyra Banks, then verbally assaulted by Whitney, and then apparently had sex with Shep, which is like, that's rough. That's a lot for one take in her lifetime, mostly on camera.
Mostly on camera. And the thing about Whitney is he is the producer and he is the person who convinced Bravo, like, you should follow around my douchebag friends. We're gentlemen. And so he floats in and out. And when it does come to Katherine, I do think you have legs to stand on that if he didn't make things worse, he certainly didn't take his power to make things better.
He also was secret sleeping with her.
And he was also secret sleeping with her and never owned that and then just watched her get worse and worse until she was off of the show.
Watch, though, makes it sound passive. He was like pretty actively saying awful things about her and like in conversation just throwing her under the bus, and all the while not being clear about the fact that they had this sexual relationship at some point, which does make it different. If you have a lot of negative feelings about someone, it's just because you don't like their vibe. That's different from once upon a time you were sex friends. Now you're talking a lot of shit. That's important context, I feel.
It is. Why don't you give the listeners because now I do think we have to talk about Thomas Ravenel and Katherine and give the context on Katherine.
Oh boy. I honestly should have like fully gone back to the history books and done a full freshen up. So I will say my apologies if I do not get these facts all correctly. Because while I have been there from the jump with this show, I don't do a lot of rewatching of Southern Charm.
No, you can't.
Yeah, you can't. You just gotta leave it in the past, you know? And I don't think I've ever watched the COVID season because I simply cannot.
No,
anyway, Thomas Ravenel and Katherine. So Katherine came on the show as like a baby.
21.
She was a legal consenting adult, but she was very much a sexy baby and super sheltered, not necessarily the brightest bulb that any of us have ever witnessed. And she just was like demolished by the men of this show. She got involved with Thomas Ravenel, who was easily twice her age and was a truly nightmarish, malicious person. And they have a pile of babies together. They kept having babies and then would break up and say horrible things about each other and fight about custody and then get back together again and then have another baby and then break up and say horrible things. It was this awful on again, off again nightmare situation in which things eventually escalated to a point of like accusing each other of different things like substance abuse and really getting into the muck in trying to get custody from each other. And I think realistically, it does seem like some of those allegations on both sides were probably pretty accurate. It's just one of those things where, like, on reality TV, you watch a lot of awful real life things play out, but sometimes things cross the line to where you're like, I don't feel like I should be watching this. And I think everyone reached that point with their dynamic at a certain stage where it didn't feel like this is our little glimpse into these monster people's lives in a fun way. Instead, it was very dark and very upsetting, and there's children involved. And I'm not trying to be all, think of the children about it, like, but a little bit.
I think that Katherine's experience trying to be a mom on Southern Charm is why Cameron stepped down when her and her husband started having kids.
Possibly. I also think that Cameron was always a little bit of a funky fit on the show. He was one of those people like Whitney who never really wanted to share their actual life. They wanted the benefits of being on reality TV and the fame and all of that, but didn't want any of the mess to show. And Whitney can kind of get away with it, A, because he's so messy that sometimes the mess leaks through anyway, but also because he's a producer, so he can control his edit and can kind of walk that line more effectively. Cameron really gave us nothing and was just there to make it not a show entirely about men. Initially, she was kind of the token woman, and which is weird for a Bravo show. And then when it came to the point where, like, a lot of housewives reach that stage too, where it's like, okay, like Garcelle, sorry, babe, love ya, but you need to tell us something more than like the fun, exciting, great things happening in your career right now. This can't just be an ad for your beautiful life. You got to show us. You got to be somewhere in between the Cameron Garcelle point and the Thomas Katherine. We don't want to see the true dark underbelly in full detail of your worst, sickest parts of your life. We also don't want to just see the glossy Instagram version. You got to hit that sweet spot in the middle.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's important context that, like, not only was there, like, Thomas Ravenel had a lot of power in Charleston, South Carolina, because he was a former politician and his family was full of white men politicians who had run the town or whatever. And, like, there was never going to be a point where Katherine was on an even playing field, money-wise, power-wise, support-wise, any of it.
No, and their storyline created a really interesting kind of A-B comparison about, in the context of the South and this kind of upper crust society and whatever, the difference in terms of repercussions and forgiveness and stigma for men versus women. Like, when we meet Thomas Ravenel, he's this like disgraced former politician who had served time for selling coke or something like coke related, and had been this kind of like corrupt, sleazy political guy. And everyone was like, oh, Thomas, you know how he is. And Katherine hadn't really done much wrong except for sleeping with Whitney. And he was going around like a fucking Death Eater, like whispering dark secrets in people's ears about her and talking about what a slut she was. And then as she and Thomas had their escalating drama, they would both behave really horribly. And it seemed like it only ever stuck to her. Always be like, oh, well, Thomas, he's making those bad decisions. You know how he does. And with Katherine, they would be like, she's a fucking mess. She needs to get her life together. She needs to be in rehab. And again, that's not to say that she didn't need to get her shit together, but they just faced really different levels of repercussions, considering they were a lot of times wrapped up in very similar issues.
Well, and a lot of, because you can't talk about Whitney without talking about his mom,
Patricia.
And the thing is that Patricia will gather all of these loser men who have done wretched things to women and each other the entire season. And then she'll be like, it's Easter. Put on a nice top and a tie. And we're sitting down and I'm feeding you Easter dinner. And I'm going to tell you what fine, upstanding gentleman you are and how goofy it is that you tried to ruin some lady's life this year.
Yeah, Patricia is so challenging because I want to love her because she is so like decadent and ridiculous and wearing like Afghans and floating around drinking martinis in the afternoon. She's like a fabulous character. But first of all, for this character to exist in the modern era, it's a bit like, oh, we all know there's some dark secrets in your closet, ma'am. And then she does have these dinners and interactions with the guys where for a minute you're like, oh, she's kind of giving it to the guys because she'll kind of like talk down to him and like tease him a little bit and is very like, I'm above you kind of maternal position in comparison to them. But then inevitably in any of those scenes, it quickly turns around to her talking trash about the women that they're with, giving them horrific advice. The true traitor to her own gender to a degree where it's like, oh no, it's clear the pecking order in her mind is like Patricia, then the men, then all the other women.
And it is like being what you would call a fan of Southern Charm and being a fan of Bravo. I understand why the Southern Charm community doesn't always reflect the Bravo community because it is so male centered. And then like there's all that like manners and good old boy shit and like, we're so classy. And I can't think, and maybe the Below the Deck shows do it because those boats are usually captained by men. I can't think of other Bravo shows where men were important except for like Flipping Out with Jeff Lewis.
Honestly, I think the closest we have to another one like it, and it's not that men are the most important in these shows, but I would say that they're like equal playing field, is like a Vanderpump / The Valley situation where the men get their own plot lines. It's just jarring because the flagship base behind Bravo will always be the concept of Real Housewives. Like that's the thing that really like blew it up, that turned Bravo into what it is. And there's so many zillions of cities, and all of those, some of them more than others, there'll be men present. Like I don't super watch a lot of Jersey, even though I hear that it is perfection and I should be. But my understanding is that the men on Jersey are a lot more active in the compared to like Beverly Hills or whatever. They'll talk about what's going on with Mauricio, but Mauricio's not a star on the show, you know?
No, yeah.
But I think it's much more even Steven. Like you'll get an entire episode where a lot of what you're paying attention to is what's happening with Jax or Tom and his shitty band or whatever is going on. But you also get plots with the ladies. And what's weird about Southern Charm is a lot of times it's really just focused around following the men, which is fine, except they're nightmare people.
They're nightmares.
It is interesting to see a show explore male friendships in the way that it does. It still has that Bravo soft approach of really being about interpersonal relationships and fights and misunderstandings and betrayals that you don't normally get a lot of that in conversation about how men relate to each other. Like the Austin Craig breakup and reunion over the course of this season kind of did nothing for me, but it was something that I feel like you don't really see that a lot.
Yes. And I will say that like the Shep, Austin, Craig friendship and the triangle or the duo that it creates and uncreates, and someone gets thrown out, someone gets to come back in. It is interesting because then you do get to watch like how men prioritize their friendships. And for the men of Southern Charm, it's how much of like a chore are you in my life? Like when Shep was really like bananas and struggling and whatnot, then Austin was like, or not Austin, Craig. Craig was like, oh, I'm out. I don't actually want to deal with that. And that's like Craig's go-to is to be like, that feels like work.
It's also interesting because I feel like I've heard like in life many times from men that they are less likely to tell each other what they really think of their partners or the choices they're making in their lives, or tell them what they think they should do instead. That guys tend to be like, air quotes, less judgmental or less involved in each other's lives that way. And I don't know that Southern Charm is the most accurate eye into how the average man functions, but if they are any sort of representation of it, they are just as judgy. They're just talking to each other about a third party as opposed to addressing it directly. Like if you take the Austin Shep Craig dynamic and you stack it up compared to like an early Vanderpump Stassi Kristen Katie situation, a lot of what happened this season would have been resolved as quickly as Stassi being like, you're being a fucking bitch. Fix your behavior right now.
I need you to fix your face.
Exactly. As opposed to her going and talking to Katie about Kristen all season, and then Kristen trying to talk to Katie about what Stassi said to her. There is always that element of people talking about each other too, but it honestly feels to me like the women have just been a lot more direct about whatever it is that's on their plate versus the men of Southern Charm do a lot of little whispers behind backs.
Well, and I think we see a lot of that too in Love is Blind when the men get together and they're like, do you like your lady? And like they'll bring up stuff that they've never brought up to the person that they're marrying in 2 weeks.
Yeah, that's true.
Love is Blind is so healthy for all of us.
I realize that we're not talking about Love is Blind right now, however we are. And Love is Blind, I get so psyched the first few episodes, and then it gets really boring when they all just like each other. Because you got to have that on the spectrum of toxicity. You got to get that sweet spot in the middle.
We got to have more haters on Love is Blind. But then we demonize the haters on Love is Blind. I mean, and by we, I mean you all. who are listening are like, well, we didn't like her because she told that guy his pants sucked. His pants sucked. Like,
when you said you and looked pointedly forward, I was like, me? And I was like, trust me, I am judgmental as hell. My favorite people on TV are some of the worst people on TV. I'm a real supporter. I get mad when the fan base kicks somebody off of a show for being too bad. I understand, again, like the Katherine situation, sometimes the darkness threshold or the bad behavior threshold crosses a point where it's like, okay, no, you can't keep getting a paycheck for your monstrous behavior. Right up until that threshold, I'm having a great time.
oh, for sure. And I think what's so interesting about the men of Southern Charm is, of course, they feel owed the women's time and affection and attention. But on Southern Charm, they're more likely to get it, as in the case with this season with JT, the incel, and Vanita, a perfectly gorgeous girl.
Man, I can't believe that we've gotten this far into the episode if we're talking about JT and Vanita. I also can't believe that when you asked which one needs to be eliminated, I forgot JT existed, because he is the correct answer.
He is the correct answer.
He's awful. He is awful. And I know that's a mean thing to say about a real live human who don't know personally, but good Lord, I cannot fucking stand that man.
No, he is, for what? So he's this little man. For people who don't watch, just go look him up. Google right now JT Southern Charm. You know he's not a man that you don't want to spend time with on, like, first impressions of a photo alone. Like,
yeah, the vibe shoots through the screen at you. You
yes.
really catch what's going on.
And he's like one of those ratty boys who's like secretly mean, but is telling you the entire time that he's so nice. And he's like so nice, and he doesn't understand why Taylor didn't want to kiss him. And then Vanita did want to kiss him. And then he was like, oh, I could be kissing, you know, a girl who looks like me. I'm assuming it was undercover racism as to why he never went for it with Vanita.
It's possible. I don't know. I really don't know what that little rat man is up to. I don't know. Vanita is so far outside of his league. I'm confused by that entire storyline. A lot of people thought that it was fake. I don't think it's fake. I think it's really embarrassing for Vanita. I don't understand how you like that.
I wouldn't have crafted that for me for $1 million. Like, if Andy said you'd be the focal point of the entire show, we would change all of the like copy and you're front and center, and we're giving you Watch What Happens Live. We just have to have you kiss JT a little. I'd be like, no, thank you. That's so bad for my reputation.
The archetype of the kind of pick-me girl behavior of like, oh, I'm not like other girls, where you try and build yourself up conversationally by shitting on the entire rest of your gender and be like, oh, whatever it is, like, I love watching football because I'm not like other girls, that kind of thing. JT is like that, but gender reversed, where he's constantly being like, his whole weird like fuckboy exorcism thing, and being like, these men don't know how to treat a woman. I'm not like that. I'm not like these other boys. I'm very special. But then he is exactly the same as all of them.
Correct. And JT is the perfect example of watching a man who believes he does not take part in the patriarchy and the abuse of women, benefiting off of his asshat friends who are just louder about it. And him being like, oh, I would never cheat on anyone. That doesn't make you a good guy.
So, yeah, you super would, because you had a secret girlfriend all season.
All season, JT. He is gross. And I knew he was gross from minute one that he was on my screen. And I almost called Andy. And I was like, Andy, why?
He really, I'm upset about how much he tanked Vanita's social stock in the process. Because the other thing is, if you're doing shady stuff with a secret girlfriend, obviously you're the villain in that situation. But Vanita did not seem to be able to keep her story straight about what she did or did not know and when. She would 1 second be like, as far as I knew, he's totally single. And then we would cut to, a one-on-one. Sorry, my dog is screaming in the other room. Why he's upset.
He also hates JT.
You can sense that I'm talking about JT and he's getting real riled up. But no, she would be like, oh, I have no idea about him having a girlfriend. And then she would be like, hey, you know, it's not my responsibility not to be a homewrecker, haha. And it was, the vibes were weird and confusing, and the timeline was messy for sure.
Yeah. And yeah, he's just, and before Vanita, we watched him have an entire season where he was trying to gaslight Taylor into believing that she was attracted to him and wanted to be his girlfriend, and was like literally just waiting for which Shep dated Taylor. I was like, which one of them dated Taylor? Because the women only have roles on Southern Charm if they're dating the men.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. I think that's why Molly was immediately like, I will kiss Shep. I'll kiss any of them to keep this job. Like,
it's not the only way for them to stay on the show, but it's the on ramp, because you can take someone like Madison, who got on she was already related to the show, but then that seemed pretty suspicious to me that she was dating Austin, who I have some theories about.
yes.
Yes, that she got on the show and then was so beautiful and charming and lovely that we were all like, hell yeah, more Madison. So now she can be there, even though she's not dating one of the core cast members. But the only way she was going to get on the show was to be connected to one of these guys first. Her stock has also tanked this season. I love her so much, and I don't want to be mad at my beautiful, perfect Queen Madison. However, in the fallout of the Craig Paige breakup, she's been,
I know,
like, pretty on the wrong side of history on that one.
Yeah. So JT, let's wrap it up with him. He spent an entire season just begging Taylor to believe that he was a nice guy. And then Taylor would go, I know you're a nice guy. I just also happen to not get like sexy feelings off of you. And he's like, but I think you do. But I think you do. But I think you do. Like, wouldn't it be nice if you slept with a nice guy? And she's like, ah.
He definitely falls into the category of people that believe that being nice entitles them to your affection.
Yes.
And it's like, no, you can be as lovely as you want, and I can appreciate that. That doesn't mean I have to find you attractive. That doesn't mean I have to spend time with you. We can just not vibe. Valid. But then that quickly, especially with that type of guy, turns into women only like nasty guys and they don't like nice guys like me. Nice guys finish last. He's got real kind of incel.
Yeah. No, like literally my only bullet point for him is JT and incel. That's who he is.
Who keeps ruining the storylines of way more beautiful, talented, interesting women.
Yes.
Who seems to think that he is incredibly charming despite all evidence to the contrary.
So you brought up the Craig and Paige breakup. And at first, I wanted this episode to only be about the Craig and Paige breakup. Because I feel like, so I was at book club and someone said something really interesting after someone explained the Craig and Paige breakup and the Bravo of it all. And they said it really reflects the culture of coercion that goes on in American hetero relationships, in that Craig really thought that if he just kept asking Paige to move to South Carolina and be his wife and the mother of his kids and only focus on that, she would eventually say, okay, you're right, I don't have wants. And she just never did. But he kept, instead of facing that, he went, I can get her to do it.
Yeah, one of the more interesting scenes, because it has been really, really cool to see how they're playing out this breakup on two dueling shows, more the Paige perspective on Summer House and more of his perspective on Southern Charm, and they were airing at the same time for a while. It has been an interesting way that has rolled out. And one of the scenes that I was like, that is quite an insight, is they were talking to, I think it was when they were talking to Austin, when they kind of made back up again. And Craig said something like, oh, Paige wants 2 kids. And Paige was like, no, I don't. And he was like, yeah, that's what we said, because I wanted, this is not an exact quote, obviously, I wanted 4 and you didn't want any, so we decided that we're going to do 2, so you want 2. And she was like, no, the compromise between wanting kids and not wanting kids isn't 2 kids. You're still winning that argument. You're still getting what you want. It's a binary. You're having kids, you're not having kids. 2 kids is having kids. I did not That's what I wanted to do. But that was truly, he looked genuinely shocked that that wasn't how she had understood it as well. And I think that it was the same thing with moving, where she was so clear and he just only was willing to hear what he wanted to hear, and then now is playing the victim when we've seen her repeatedly in scenes say, my career is really taking off right now. Things are really different now than they were a few years ago. I'm really excited about where things are going. I'm hot and cool and in my 30s and blowing up in New York City. Why would I slam the emergency brake on to be your baby oven in Charleston? Though somehow the audience is turning on her. I can't stand it.
I know. You all need to get it together, okay? Like, you all really need to get it together because we can't continue to tear down women for choosing themselves. Also, I would say that Paige was preparing Craig that she was always going to choose herself first from the moment their lips touched. She was always telling him, I'm not willing to move to South Carolina. The first time he talked to her about being engaged, because I just rewatched this episode, the first time he goes, I think we'll be engaged within a year, she burst into tears and said, I can't leave my mom.
I remember that scene. Like, she has been clear. And granted, they're in a relationship. There's plenty of conversations we don't see over the years that they were together. I'm sure there are times where she was like, maybe I could see that. And that's fine. You're allowed to think about different ways that your life could go and weigh and consider your options and talk about it with a partner. But we have seen her be so fucking clear about this, and his little blindsided routine, I'm not buying for a second, especially because I've been suspicious of Craig for a long time because his breakup with Naomi, their whole relationship, was something that I am personally familiar with. That dynamic, I think, is so insidious, which very similarly, he played the victim all the time of like, she's so mean, she's unsupportive, she's not having my back while I'm trying to figure things out. Meanwhile, she was like getting a master's degree and was working and was balancing all of these things and was trying to build an adult life. And he was like being a flop, doing a ton of Adderall and lying about taking the bar. And she just was being like, could you get your shit together at all and be a partner to me? And the answer kept being no. But honestly, now that I think about it, their situation was very similar to Carl and Lindsay, where, yeah, she was being a bitch, but also if you were trying to hitch your wagon to a life partner who is incapable of making coherent plans or achieving anything on their own, it would be hard not to turn into kind of a bitch about it.
Well, and the difference between Craig and Carl is that when Craig is complaining about Naomi being a mean bitch or saying, like, I know that I can get Paige to move down here, she wants me to buy her a ring, Craig has an entire community around him to be like, yeah, that's the right thing that should happen. Paige should want to live down here with us where it's hot all the time and racist and mean. and that's beautiful. And she should want to have 8 of your kids. And he keeps getting, because it's so insidious in the Southern charm culture that like men get what they want and women are there to serve men and be wives and be perfect wives at that. He keeps getting affirmed that that's what he should want by his bozo friends. Meanwhile, Carl's fighting for his life in New York with Paige and Sierra, Lindsay, Danielle, and all of these women just being like, actually, you suck. You're a loser. Like,
well, I think that's a really important difference in the dynamics between the two, which is that, like, to your point, in Southern Charm, the goal that everyone has in their dating is to get married and pop out babies immediately. Everybody is cruising for like the white picket fence, 2.5 children and a golden retriever type existence. And Summer House is a bunch of New Yorkers. And New Yorkers truly are like, I'm only 38. Why would I settle down now? Is continuing to adventure and drive forward far later into their lives. That's just how New York culture is compared to Southern culture, where people are more likely to want to try and settle down and have this sort of heteronormative existence as quickly as possible. And so you see the men on Summer House are like freaking out over the idea of calling someone their girlfriend. And the Southern Charm are like, When will you be fertile enough to bear my seed?
But then also there's this layer of icky irony about the men of Southern Charm where it's still all on their terms. And it's like, I will have baby when I decide I'm grown up. And because men can have children longer, and because there is such an imbalance of men to female in the ratio in Charleston, they literally do just get to wait around until they're 49. And then a girl is telling them that she actually hates you on a beach in the Bahamas.
Please tell me the conversation has naturally flown to where I really need us to get to, which is why I didn't want this to just be a Craig Paige breakup. Is we need to talk about Shep's plotline this season because it meant a lot to me.
Yeah, and you give the context because I meant to pull up the psycho text message he sent that girl.
You pull up the psycho text message. Also, remind me of her name. I'm trying to remember what her name is.
Oh, we loved her.
And I already forgot what her name is, but she is my favorite person.
Sienna.
Sienna. There we go. So, context for anyone who didn't watch the season. First of all, I recommend just fast forward through any seasons that don't involve, or any scenes that don't involve Shep, and just burn through just the Shep and Sienna stuff. If you just watch their scenes from this season, the whole thing will take you like 45 minutes. It's so worth it. Maybe someone smashed it together on YouTube so you could just watch that part. But basically, Shep has spent the last decade on our televisions being this womanizing Peter Pan syndrome, can't stop banging everything with a pulse ass bitch. And then he decides that suddenly he has fallen in love. A Bahamian beauty queen goddess who's, do we know how old she is? Like, baby. She's baby.
She's a baby. Yeah, she's got to be in her 20s. She's a model, right?
She's stunningly beautiful. She lives on an island paradise. She's young and has the world in front of her. And he's like, okay, I finally found a woman that I'm so impressed with that now, as the men of Southern Charm do, I will declare her my bride and impregnate her. And like, miss me with that shit. I am not interested. You are gross. And he, just like me, just wouldn't hear it. Just would not take that on. And took everyone on a trip to go see her. He repeatedly was like, you're gross. Can I hang out with your friends instead? Or actually, maybe I just won't hang out. Maybe I'll just mind my own business and you guys have fun. And he would not leave her alone, and then wrote the most unhinged text message we've ever had the pleasure of hearing on TV.
Good morning, Sienna. Listen, this is also after she's already told him, I have the ick from you and we're not in love. But he wouldn't hear it. They've already had one encounter on a beach where he's like, do you want to go on a boat with us tomorrow? And she goes, I don't want to spend any time with you. I don't.
It's a no.
It's a no. May a love like that never find me. So,
like Paige, she is being clear as day about where she stands.
I think she like
be like, are you dating? And she'd be like, no, I am dating him. And he'll be like, but we are.
And we're engaged. So he writes, on the second morning of the Bahamas trip, in front of all of his loser friends, good morning, Sienna. Listen, I love seeing you and no one else. No one. But I'm going to try to convince someone they love me for 3 days. But I'm not going to try to convince someone they love me for 3 days, especially when I know deep down they do. Here's hoping you understand my feelings and exalt them. I just don't feel this way ever. I know that you agree and feel a lot of what I do because I've heard it from your perfect little freckled lips. And those around us can say and think what they will, but we will have the last laugh and we'll have love, laughter, and everything that matters. Okay, my TED Talk is over. If you had screenshot that to me and said, I got this today, I would have said, girl, you in danger.
What's wild, too, is he proudly shares this with everyone. With his friends, with the cameras. He's so about how he wrote the perfect text message. And it could not be a worse text message. It is incredibly creepy. It's trying to be, like, funny at the end, but it's not landing. He talks about her lips in a way that no one wants to be talked about. It's way too long. Also, I hope you understand my feelings and exalt them. I can't decide if him trying to be like, look at my good vocabulary, or if it's like religious coded.
No, it was very biblical. It's gross. There's also like, he's very much giving like, we are Romeo and Juliet. No one is rooting for us, but I'm rooting for us. Because his friends have told him, dude, she hates you.
She has basically been like, dude, I hate
like,
you.
Yes. Also, Craig loves to latch onto a woman misbehaving and tell everyone her flaws. And I just watched him do this to Lindsay on Summer House. And like, he loves to yell at women. And
he's a bit Sandivalian in that way. He
yes,
does scream at a woman.
He loves to scream at a woman and feel righteous in that. So he can't let go that Shep is in love with a woman who clearly has the ick off of him. And he's like, she's using you. She just wanted you to get on the show with her.
Everyone kept insisting that she was using him to get on the show. And first of all, if she was using him to get on the show, she would have pretended to like him and would have been in scenes. She was like, I would prefer to not be on camera and not go to your activities and not see you because I don't like you. How is that her using him to get on the show? First of all, like, in what way does this evidence reach this conclusion for us? It does not.
So then I think Whitney and Patricia make up a story about her trying to like farm Whitney on Raya.
From what I understand, because there's a couple things like that I'm like, wait, what's the actual story here? From what I understand, the Raya thing is that they matched on Raya, but never talked. And on dating apps, you match with people all the time. It just means you both said like, yeah, maybe. That's not her going after him. And if they matched, he also said yes to her.
Yeah.
So, okay, you both thought one another were vaguely attractive, which means that she is insane because Whitney, again, looks like a melting wax figure of Katie Lang. However, to each their own. And honestly, maybe she was gold digging. Good for her. Shep, what does it say if she was gold digging? You come from old money and your personality just sucks so bad it wasn't worth it. Did you consider that, bud?
And then
possibility?
And then after years of Shep never being the sympathetic hero because he's always been a mess and he's always been riddled on substances and he's always been screaming and picking fights with people and doing women wrong or whatever. Now all of a sudden it's like, don't we feel bad for Shep? And I'm like, no, I've been waiting.
Well, and another one of those kind of like, wait, what's the actual backstory here? From what I understand, I don't remember if someone said it on Watch What Happens Live or if it came from the internet or what, but he had this whole thing about why would she let us come all the way out to the islands if she didn't want to be with me? And then I guess that he said at some point that she had told him beforehand, like, we need to have a serious talk before you come out here, like, obviously setting it up for a breakup, and that he had been like, no, we're going to come out, we're doing this on camera because I have respect for my audience and I want them to see what all's going on. So you made this happen on camera and then went all victim mode and were like, please, America, don't be too hard on her. You know, even though she really took advantage of me and was horrible to me. Don't punish her too bad, internet.
And what ends up happening in both the Craig and Paige breakup and Sienna getting the ick from Shep, I can't even call it a breakup because I think he made it all up in his head.
She repeatedly was like, we are not now and have never been dating. We are not now and have never been in love. And
I have talked to you 3 times. Like, please stop texting my phone. Is that people are siding actively with Shep and Craig. And it's insane. Because, I mean, and I think it's, again, the power imbalance on Southern Charm and how they really do want us to be invested in these bozos who make pillows and wear shoes without socks all the time. And it drives me crazy. All of it. Because on Vanderpump Rules, I bounce around between hating those morons, Schwartz, Sandoval, Peter, whatever. And it's like, and no one. I mean, people probably did stand up for Tom Sandoval when Scandoval happened or whatever. But like the way that people will be like, Paige was mean to Craig. She was mean and she should have just been happy because he was nice. And I was like, number one, like, I know that Craig stock plummeted with me when Paige broke up with him. But you and I were like, okay, we can love Craig because Paige loves Craig while they were dating. Mm-hmm. And he was our stupid, sweet baby angel who sewed pillows and wore 10 hats and didn't believe pandas were real. I've never thought he was nice. He's not a nice guy.
He's not a nice guy. He worked as a character when he was a complementary structure to Paige. Paige is this like badass, realized, whole person ass woman. And when he was her goofy, weird, pillow sewing conspiracy theory boyfriend, it was like, oh, that's nice, you know, that they say in most relationships there's a sail and there's an anchor. You know, she was this like solid anchor. She was doing stuff. She was connected to reality. And he could be just her manic pixie dream boy. And it was like, ah, that's sweet. But as soon as you cut him loose from the concept of her, the fact that he is this like flighty, emotional storyteller.
I am a lawyer and a storyteller. I'm getting it on a t-shirt.
Do it. Get it tattooed across your back. Him minus her is a lot less appealing.
Well, because he's a liar. And when I say that he's not nice, I'm not saying that he's like completely always berating people or whatever, but he's not kind. And he thrives when someone is wrong, and he gets to be the person that talks about it.
Yeah, he is very gossipy and very wallow in other people's suffering. He also just, everything is about him. Yes. Everything's always about him. Paige's success was about him, because how did her success take away attention from him? And how did her success make his success look smaller? And how fuck up the timeline of what he wanted for his future. And it's the same thing with everything else. When he's mad at Austin, it's because Austin doesn't understand his relationship with drinking. And when he's mad at Shep, it's because Shep's not doing what Craig thinks someone should do in that situation. Everything is through the filter of him seeing himself as this sort of golden boy who is doing things the correct way and everyone should fall in step behind, despite the fact that he is constantly making terrible decisions and screaming at women and being a fucking mess. I don't know why he's the authority on everything, and that everything needs to reflect back on him perfectly.
I don't want to call you out, but like I am going to tell you that this is what happens at the end of the Southern Charm reunion.
Oh, I will be transparent with the listener that I did admit in the beginning of this episode that I have no memory of the end of the second episode of the reunion, so I either walked out of the room or just like entered a fugue state. So sorry.
So the entire time, Craig, and I just kept texting people, I go, he's about to lose it. Like he's spiraling. Like when Craig is in an emotional tsunami, it's like standing on that beach with Parker Posey on White Lotus. Like you're just watching it. And I was like, he's going to start screaming at Andy Cohen for like asking a nothing question or like telling them that it's time to break for lunch and he isn't hungry or something. And so Andy asks the entire couch, all of the cast members, who is afraid of Craig now? And they all raise their hand. And I was like
afraid for his well-being or afraid of him like he's scary?
Afraid of him because he's scary, because he had just screamed at, who owns the Southern Hospitality restaurant? Leva. He had just screamed at Leva, and Leva was like, you are literally on the edge of this couch screaming at me, and all I asked you to do was to think about it from this way, and you cannot hear that. And so like, and then Austin has a breakdown because Austin kind of is like a soft boy. Like I do think sometimes I think that if Austin didn't keep the company that he kept, he'd be a man that I would allow in a room with me. Like,
that would be a mistake. But,
yeah, probably.
But I support your delusion.
So basically, like Austin confides to Andy and the group that the thing about him and Craig's friendship is that it's so one-sided, and now Austin doesn't know how to move forward. Because he knows that anytime he makes a mistake, even if he doesn't know it's a mistake, Craig's out. And that like hurts Austin each time or whatever. And that leads Andy to be like, well, is everyone afraid of Craig like this? And they all are. And I'm like, well, that's telling.
Austin and Craig are in kind of an abusive relationship, I feel like.
Yeah.
I am not certainly going to speak to anyone's sexuality. I would never make any sort of conclusions about anybody on that front. However, their dynamic with each other is not normal and is very one-sided. It's really clear that Austin is significantly more emotionally invested in his dynamic with Craig than the other way around. And part of that, I think, especially this season, is the standard thing where someone gets involved in a relationship and then they just stop feeling the need to have friends. They're like, oh, well, I've got this one person who can fulfill every need in my life, which is super healthy, so I'm just going to let all my friendships decay. And I think Craig was a bit in that mode, and that's part of why there was so much of an imbalance. But I think even beyond him being with Paige and kind of floating away from Austin, I think across the board, Craig is very self-centered and it's all about him, versus Austin gets very fixated on other people. And he has been very fixated on Craig, and the way that they handled growing apart from each other and then trying to reconcile felt like a toxic romantic relationship.
Well, and part of it is too, is that at some point, Craig and Austin were very similar socially and behaviorally and whatnot. And we have watched Austin get a girl into his orbit, use her for what he wants to use her for, and then literally cast her aside for the next girl that comes into his orbit. And we've seen him do it to castmates who are beloved and castmates who we sometimes tilt our head at, Lindsay. And like, Austin did used to be the guy who was like, if you're right in front of me, I care about you. And if you're not right in front of me, I'm going to do me. And I'm always choosing me. And I'm never thinking about the relationships that I've built out. I wonder if being embarrassing on Summer House and the whole Sierra thing made Austin grow up, or if it was Madison, or if it was him being filmed at some rando's house while Madison's screaming at him for cheating on her, and he's running around in his underpants going, babe, babe.
I don't think any of those things forced him to grow up. I don't think he's grown up. I think that he, like most of the guys of Bravo TV, their dynamics with women are oftentimes mostly about men, meaning that they are trying to hook up with women that they want the other guys to think the girl that they banged was hot. It's their status and their ability to like pull a hot lady. And I think Austin on screen for years has had these fucked up dynamics with women because he doesn't actually particularly like them. He just thinks that they're hot and will reflect well on him. Like, he and Madison, when you watch scenes with them now that they're not in any way romantically involved, there's like zero chemistry.
Right.
I don't see how there ever necessarily was anything. I think she just wanted to be on the show, and he thought she was a pretty lady that would up his stock, versus his feelings about Craig are genuine feelings. Obviously, he very clearly was really hurt by Craig pulling away. And what we saw this season is how he handles actually losing someone that he gives a shit about. And we haven't seen it before because he didn't care about Sierra, and he didn't care about Lindsay, and he didn't care about Madison.
So like what we're saying is like we talk all the time about how like women need to decenter men, but also it almost like it feels like men also only center men because it's very Grecian. The Greeks used to believe that men could only love men romantically and emotionally and in a way that mattered, and they just had wives for babies.
I mean, the Greeks were a little bit onto something, at least with the cast of Southern Charm.
Well, and we see it happen all the time on like Love is Blind, and the way that the men will gather together and talk shit on their girlfriends and whether or not they got the hot person from the pods or whatever. There is like, I mean, I said that Craig's stock plummeted when Paige dumped him. There is a lot of like men just fronting for other men. Like, okay, take a boyfriend who's really nice to you until his bros are around. And then all of a sudden it's like, you bitch, you didn't even bring me, blah, 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 blah. And then I'm fighting you in the yard because I'm like, you're just going to call her a bitch today because your baby bros are here, and that's like cute. And I think like Southern Charm has that in every episode, and then they made them the stars of the franchise. We know almost next to nothing about the women of Southern Charm.
Yeah,
The
Austin was
time.
dating someone this season. I don't remember her name. I don't remember if we actually got a scene with her. I couldn't tell you what her job is, anything about her. She could be standing next to me on the street tomorrow and I would have no idea. And that's fine. Not everyone's romantic partner needs to be a main plot line. But and also to be clear, I'm not trying to shit on the concept of men having strong friendships with other men. I think they should. I think that being honest and open and vulnerable and emotional in your friendships is important, and caring about what your friends think is important. And I want men to have all of that as well with each other. I just think that when the women in your life become the collateral for those relationships, when the women that you're with are really only serving as a way to prove a point to the men in your life, that's a problem.
Yeah. And like the women in your life can be anything. Like I think that's why Craig struggled so much in the early seasons, because he was supposed to be a lawyer and he just kept lying to people about the bar. And so like it was job status. It was money plays a lot of who actually gets the most respect in Southern Charm. It's old timey names and whether or not your grandfather's name is on a sign in Charleston. Like, and I think if we take it all the way back to Katherine, by the time Katherine was on Thomas's radar, I think she had almost dated Shep, had slept with Whitney, maybe had tried to date Craig. So like the there was nothing that Thomas Ravenel was going to get out of Katherine, like statue wise or like class wise or money wise or anything. So he literally ran that girl into the ground. Did they ever actually get married?
I don't think so.
I don't think they ever got married. Literally. And now his Wikipedia page says that he's really trying hard to co-parent with her. And I was like, you nightmare man. You shouldn't even be allowed near her.
And I'm sure she is hard to co-parent with, but I also think that she deserves like a lifetime settlement from Bravo for the psychological damage that was rained down upon her still squishy young brain.
Well, because I think to be a 19-year-old who has been told their entire life, a man will love you once you're their wife and the mother of their children. And for that to go so horribly wrong with her, for her. I mean, it's kind of like Honora, where like Honora for 3 days gets to be a billionaire and a Russian billionaire's wife or whatever. And then he immediately is punted to the curb as soon as she has no value. Katherine was on the way to having a life in a society that she did not fit into. They othered her every chance that they got, and Whitney was the leader of that. And then at the end of it, Thomas was like, I don't owe you alimony or child support or anything.
Well, and everyone seemed so furious with her for not being more delicate and more ladylike and more refined and a better mother and a better all of this. It's the kind of classic Madonna whore setup. They were excited about her when she fit in the whore archetype. When she didn't seamlessly transition to Madonna, it did not go over well.
No. Is there anything else about Southern Charm that you can think of that you have to talk about while you're on a hot mic?
Oh my God, there's so much. I knew this would happen. I knew we would get to an hour and I would be like, I'm just warming up. I still have so many thoughts and feelings about this. No, I think the big thing is, for me, I just am horrified by how much people, as we've discussed, are siding with Craig and Shep versus the ladies in those dynamics. I generally default to taking the women's side in most arguments, but especially here, I don't see how there's a mystery to this. It seems women were clear and communicative and solid in where they were at, and it's not a crime to not like someone. It's not a crime to like someone and then stop liking them.
It's also not a crime to love someone for a while and then also go, this is never going to line up logically. Like, what are we doing?
Especially when he made it really clear that as much as he pretended like he was being patient and, was willing to wait however long it took or meet in the middle or whatever. He was never actually compromising. He always wanted her to come there and was building the house and getting the bees. And I think the most obvious thing to me watching this season is that he is someone who wanted this thing, this mother of his children. And it's not that he wanted Paige and then that was what he wanted to have with her. It's that he wanted that. So he wanted Paige to be that for him. The part that was important wasn't the Paige. It was closing the loop and getting the picture perfect life that he thinks will fix everything for him.
And he always had a timestamp on that because he would continuously say, I want to have kids within the next 5 years. I don't have time to meet someone new that I'll like as much as you. Which, like, the first time that I heard him tell Paige, like, I'm just always worried because I'm worried that I'll never find someone that I like as much as you. I was like, oh, that's sweet. Look at you, Craigie boy. Cute. I was like, but now I'm like, oh my God, girl, you in danger.
Yeah. Especially because if you really like someone that much and are excited about them as a person, as opposed to the role that you think you can cram them into, you should genuinely be excited when they are thriving. I have seen so many examples of relationships, both on reality TV and in real life and all around, where it'll be a partnership. The idea is you're building a life together with this person, and yet one person views the other one's success as an affront to them, taking away attention from them, as in the case of Craig, or actually also in the case of Craig, he's both of these things, seeing their success as highlighting the other partner's failure, being like, you got this promotion at work, and now that makes me feel bad about where I am in my job. And that's a natural human thing to feel jealous sometimes, or to compare yourself to other people, or to feel a little salty about someone else getting a cool opportunity. That's not how you should feel about someone you're building a life with. You should be on the same team.
Well, and I think what also goes unsaid a lot is that, like, you have to worry about what you wish for, right? Because I can guarantee that if this had ended with Paige moving to South Carolina and doing exactly what, Craig's never going to be happy. And I know so many women who are in a relationship like this, where it's like you're running the hamster wheel to be like, I'm the only thing that can make him happy, so I'm going to make everything happy today. And then at the end of the day, that man is going to have his entire day ruined because Pizza Hut didn't put enough pepperoni on his pizza. And now it's your fault because you should have checked the pizza. And so Paige would have moved to South Carolina. And then all of a sudden, all of the things that Craig found so sexy and cool and independent about Paige aren't happening anymore because you made her uproot her life and change her life. I mean, it blows my mind how many men just don't understand that the act of giving birth and then raising a human changes your schedule and the things that you want to make time for.
Yeah, this is a really annoying thing to say, but there is a quote that I don't remember who said it or exactly what the quote is on the oldie internets. That's about the idea that, like, some men date in a way where it's like they're like rare bird collectors. They want this exotic, beautiful, wild thing, but the reason they want it is because they want to cage it. They want to take away the thing about it that is so exciting, and then they get frustrated that it's not that thing anymore. I think Paige is this beautiful, exotic, wild bird, and I agree with you that if he had actually been successful in caging her, she would have immediately stopped being the thing that he was so fixated on. I also think that whether it was with Paige or whether it now happens with whatever random Instagram model he's dating or whatever, I think he is cruising towards a real midlife crisis meltdown because he does have such a clear picture in his head of this thing that he wants his life to look like. And I think once he gets there and isn't immediately suddenly a whole different person who's happy, I think he's going to freak out.
Oh, yeah. I've watched that happen.
That's not a gendered thing. Everybody sometimes gets the thing they've been looking for and then goes, oh, this is it? It's tough when you're feeling that way and also are on international television.
I'd just like to give Serena an award again. Like, God, it took 10 whole seasons, but we finally got someone to make Shep feel unlikable.
I don't know who I need to give this award to, but whoever has made the push in the last 2 to 3 years to finally make gay men actual characters on Bravo shows, thank you.
Thank you.
Because we got the occasional little flurry of a homosexual side character, but we were not getting anything like the gays of Southern Hospitality, who have like whole romantic storylines and are sometimes villainous as fuck and are these complicated, nuanced, full characters. I feel like we're not quite there on Southern Charm. We have some gay characters who are like little cuties, but they're not really in the mix. I would like them to be more in the mix. I think that adds another interesting layer if we're exploring how these guys interact with each other to get them a little more in the mix. But again, Southern Hospitality fucking killing the game.
Killing it. Hey, Soho.
Bring it back. I need 45 new seasons starting right now.
They did the reunion on the Watch What Happens live stage, and I was like, Andy, that's disrespectful. Build them a set.
Can we do an episode about Southern Hospitality that is just me for 1 hour talking about how obsessed I am with Emmy? Please.
Of course.
No one has to listen to it. We don't even have to record it. Can I just talk to you for an hour about how I feel about Emmy?
You already have, and I answer the phone all the time.
God damn, that season was fun.
If you had to sum up 10 seasons of Southern Charm and put it as a warning beacon of a lesson to people everywhere, what would that lesson be?
Warning, the majority of people appear to be incapable of change.
Yeah. I think also mine is like, you have to pay attention to how often men are used to getting their way and how often they're used to coercing you. I know I don't say that word right, but coercing you into getting their way. So I think with like the Paige and the Craig relationship, I just wish that the fan base would lock in on the fact that we love to tell children that no means no, and like you have choices and you get to say no. But every time a woman says no, every time Paige said not yet, no, I don't want kids or whatever, Craig's brain immediately went, I'll ask her 5 more times and we'll see. Like, I'll wait 5 more months and then we'll see. And he was so convinced that he was going to get his way and that he could convince her that he was blindsided by this breakup, and even lied to Andy and said she never broke up with me. I don't know why she said it on the podcast.
You know, there's a phrase that I feel like gets credited to probably like Midwestern moms. It's one of those things that you hear people say that's like, you shouldn't date anyone that you couldn't handle breaking up with. The process of going through a breakup or a divorce with them would be so bad that it doesn't make the relationship worth it. And I feel like that's advice that should have been given to Paige early on in this dynamic, because I believe that she really cared about Craig and that they had a real love and a real relationship and there was some there. But it's not surprising how he's handling this. He is someone that makes shit up and lies and throws tantrums. And it's not shocking that the way he's handling this breakup is making shit up and lying and having tantrums. And this cannot be fun for her. I feel for her.
I tell friends all the time when they want to take a chance and tell me about a new man that they're dating, because they know that my opinion will already be bad. I'll be like, a new man? Ew. But they take the chance every once in a while and they'll be like, I really like him, or I want to get serious about him. Maybe he'll be my boyfriend. And I always go, you have to say no to him 5 times in 5 very different ways. And I need you to write down how they react. And I'm talking body language, tone, eye contact, what they say to you, how they say it to you, how you felt when they said it. We need to start tracking that for ourselves, because that's how we start not being in these situations with men who are just going to continue to try and whittle us down until they get their way.
Yeah. And especially if you are in a Paige style situation where you are dating someone who is not treating you the way that you want to be treated or not hearing you the way they need to hear you, but they also exist in a community that is a real echo chamber that is going to just keep telling them that they are right. That's something that you need to clock early on as well, because it's a whole lot harder to stand up to gaslighting and to handle the situation when you know someone does have this like nightmare Greek chorus that is telling them that they are right in their behavior. And that's exactly what's happening there. All that entire cast, including Madison, who usually has the right takes, everybody is being like, oh, poor Craigie has really been taken advantage of. And so it makes it even easier for him to just continue on this spiral and act like she's this villain when she ain't.
Yeah, because just like take a historical stock of all the mean things that men have ever done to you, to a woman that you know,
what a fun exercise.
to women in general, and then sit in the fact that men think that saying no to them is a meanness and a character flaw in you. Because that's what it boils down to when it comes to the Craig and Paige relationship and why it all broke down. The men of Southern Charm and a lot of men in our communities, in our families, walking around, you see them, you clock them. They think that when you say no, it's because you're hurting them on purpose and you're being mean. And it has absolutely nothing to do with your feelings or your body or anything.
So what I'm hearing is we need to all just do a better job demonstrating for men what being mean actually looks like.
Yes. Is that our manifestation?
Everyone listening, go out this week and be mean to a man.
As you know, 2025, February 2025, Kendrick Lamar looked me dead in the eye on a television camera at, I believe it was a sports game. And he said, Natalie, it's fine. We can be haters again. And my inner 12-year-old mean girl who loved ruining people's days went, finally. And she's back, baby.
The world has gone off the tracks. We need to start being mean to people again. We need to start punching Nazis and making uptight Southern asshole men feel bad about themselves. This is an important community service that we need to provide.
There are so many television shows that end with a woman perishing or being in a really fucked up situation. And I go, if you had only not cared about that man's feelings so much.
The whole my favorite murder, fuck politeness of it all. There is a thing where we are socialized to believe that hurting a man's feelings, saying no to a man, embarrassing a man, that these things are somehow equally bad as the repercussions that we face for trying to be polite, to make them feel good. That the risk to our actual physical safety is less important than making sure a stranger doesn't think you're a bitch because you don't smile back.
So start with one. This is my manifestation, that everyone starts with one. Once a day, you have to tell a man no, and you have to mean it, and you have to follow up on it, and you don't do anything. If it's no, and you clock the body language, the eye contact, the tone, what he says, what he doesn't say, but you read off of his energy, clock it. Because I believe that the best way that you can learn about whether or not a man is safe around is the way that he takes a no. And it's the first no, and it's every no after that. And you reevaluate every time.
Well, and it doesn't have to be a nightmare no. You don't have to be a massive bitch about it. You can be, if you would like.
However, please do. And then tell me about it.
Plenty of times, people do not handle it well, just being told no in a calm, cool, reasonable manner. Give that one a try. Take that one for a spin. See how it goes.
Just, do a no. Just no.
I did that to a man recently. A man that I barely knew was leaving the room and said, "Can I have a hug?" And I just went, "No." And that was the end of that exchange. And that's okay.
And she lived.
Yeah, we all survived.
Do you have a manifestation for anyone besides get mean? And then tell me about it. I just hope that people start emailing me all the times that they've been mean.
That would be great.
God.
That people are able to look at some of these relationship dynamics that we see play out on reality shows and are able to take from it that outside perspective on things that have happened in their life. Definitely, reality TV is like this exaggerated commedia performance of real life things that happen. You watch extreme versions of breakups and betrayals and friendships and all of this. And I know that I have found, dorkily enough, times that I am watching a reality TV show breakup or fight or whatever and have been like, oh, watching this when it's two other people, it's very clear who's in the right and who's in the wrong and who's being manipulative and what's going on here. But when I was one of those people, it was a lot harder.
It was hard.
Yeah, so if you find yourself watching one of these shows and either like feeling a little more intensely about it than when you would expect, or finding that some of it's familiar to you, I manifest that you take some time and sit with that and review. Maybe what you realize is you're the toxic nightmare. Maybe you've been sending some creepy Shep style text messages and could maybe put the brakes on that. Or maybe you're watching it and suddenly go, oh, I gotta break up with this bitch.
And if you are the toxic nightmare, still email me, because I think that's great. That's actually fighting against the patriarchy when we ourselves get to be toxic. I've said it.
Be a fuckboy.
Be a fuckboy. Be toxic. Be mean. Tell him that you don't want to have his kids and you're not getting a dog. Like, just really amp it up.
It's wild that not wanting to have someone's kids could be being mean. You can just not want to have someone's kids. That's not mean. Having kids is so hard for the rest.
It's so hard.
You can just not do it if you want.
Craig thought it was mean. Craig thought it was mean every time she didn't jump up and down and say, of course I'll have 5 kids. Nightmare. Yeah. Annie, do you have anything to plug?
Honestly, right now I don't really. I'm just hanging out, doing stuff. I make art. It's on the internet. If you want to look at it, I'm Annie Makes Art on TikTok. I'm AKSIEG on Instagram. And I really have not been posting much lately. And I feel like every time I come on here, I'm like, but soon.
But I will, if you follow me.
I'll be so present on social media. I'll be honest. We'll see. But I love talking about reality TV. So if you want to slide into my DMs and be like, hey, let's talk about how much Whitney sucks, I'm there and ready. Just don't slide into my DMs and be like, actually, you're wrong. And these men are lovely, sweet angels. I don't want to hear that. I will block you.
Or we fight them. I like arguing about it.
We'll see. Depending on my mood, maybe I'll just forward them to you and be like, fight this person for me.
Fight this person. Well, tolerators, you can find us at Men I've Tolerated Pod on Instagram, to All the Men I've Tolerated Before on YouTube and Patreon. And my personal stuff is at NatalieK124 on both TikTok and Instagram. And remember, tolerators, you don't have to smile through anything you're tolerating, including men who drawl in a really cute Matthew McConaughey way. But at the end, just want to keep you barefoot and pregnant. Smiles are for joy.